Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into the fascinating world of Russian politics today.
Always a fun place.
It is. I mean, it's complicated.
It is.
And today we're really trying to get a grip on Vladimir Putin.
Right.
We're using the Putin Paradox as our guide.
By Richard Sakwa.
Yes, exactly. Richard Sakwa. He's a leading expert in this area.
I mean, he's written 4 books on Putin.
4. So he's clearly got some insights to share.
He does.
So this isn't just like another Putin biography.
Whoa, no. This is going deeper.
Okay. So where are we going deeper?
Well, Sakwa really dissects the system that Putin has built.
Okay.
Like how it works, why it's lasted so long, what are the moving pieces.
So almost like a blueprint of Putinism.
Yeah, exactly. You could think of it that way.
Okay, so to understand the system, we need to understand the man himself.
Right. We can't just jump into the system without knowing where he came from.
Right. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Putin's early career, KGB agent, that's not exactly your typical resume builder.
You don't see that every day.
No, you don't. So how did that shape him?
Well, Sakwa really emphasizes how those KGB years were formative.
Okay.
It instilled in him a certain strategic mindset.
Like what? Like a spy mindset.
Kind of, but more than that, think control.
Control.
Yeah, a deep aversion to chaos.
So that KGB experience almost like gave him a blueprint.
Yeah, a blueprint for maintaining power.
Okay, and then he steps onto the world stage.
And it's not exactly a peaceful world stage, is it?
No, the 90s in Russia, I mean, talk about chaos.
Total chaos. The collapse of the Soviet Union, the transition to a market economy.
Yeah, Yeltsin's struggling to hold it all together.
Right, and then you've got the rise of the oligarchs.
Adding another layer of complexity.
Absolutely. So Putin inherits this really fragile system.
So he walks into this mess and thinks, right, I need to impose some order.
Yeah, Sakwa argues that Putin saw himself as a restorer, someone who could bring back stability, make Russia strong again.
Right, and that's where this managed democracy comes in.
Exactly, that's the system he built.
But what does that actually mean, managed democracy? Is it really democracy or is it something else?
It's a bit of both. I mean, it has the trappings of democracy, elections, a constitution, but there's a strong central authority calling the shots.
Okay, so elections happen.
Yes.
Flip.
The Kremlin exerts a lot of control behind the scenes.
Right, so maybe the results aren't exactly a surprise.
You could say that.
So it's a balancing act, this managed democracy.
It is a delicate balance between control and the appearance of freedom.
And to make it even more complicated, we've got these elite factions.
Oh, yeah. Sakwa talks about 3 main groups vying for influence.
Okay, lay it on me. Who are they?
Well, you've got the Siloviki.
The what?
The Siloviki, they're the strongmen, the hawks.
So like ex-military security services, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They want a strong state, a nationalistic Russia, you know.
Okay, so they're one faction, then who else?
You've got the liberal technocrats.
Okay, so more like the business-minded folks.
Yeah, they favor market reforms, modernization, that sort of thing.
Pragmatists. All right, and the third group?
The neo-traditionalist conservatives.
Okay, so what do they want?
They emphasize traditional values, social conservatism, a distinct Russian identity.
Okay, so not exactly fans of the West then.
Not particularly. They see Russia as having its own unique path.
So we've got the strongmen, the pragmatists, and the traditionalists.
Yeah, and Putin is right in the middle.
Trying to keep them all happy?
Well, it's more than that.
Okay.
Sakwa argues that Putin is a master at playing them off against each other.
Like a political chess game?
Exactly. He keeps any one group from becoming too powerful.
So he maintains his own power by keeping them divided.
Precisely. That's his strategy.
But how does he actually control things? I mean, does he just crack down on anyone who disagrees with him?
It's more subtle than that. Sakwa uses this term paraconstitutionalism.
Okay, what in the world does that mean?
It means operating both within the Constitution and outside of it.
Give me an example.
Think of the Nazi youth movement.
Okay. I've heard of them.
They were created by the Kremlin to mobilize young people counter opposition.
So they're like a political tool.
In a way, but they operate outside traditional parties.
So they can influence things without being directly tied to the government.
Exactly. It's a way to control the narrative without resorting to outright repression.
Okay, so it's all very carefully orchestrated.
It is a very sophisticated system.
And it's not just in politics, right? We talked about business too.
Yeah, the lines between state and business are very blurred in Russia.
Like with those state-owned enterprises, the SOEs.
Exactly. They dominate huge sectors of the economy.
And often the people running them are well connected to the government, shall we say.
You could say that loyalty and connections are very important in this system.
So it's not just what you know, it's who you know.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think we'll leave it for today.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground, but we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore.
Exactly. So be sure to join us next time for part 2.
We'll dive even deeper into Putin's system.
We'll look at the economics, the challenges Russia faces, and what the future might hold.
It's going to be fascinating.
Until then, thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Welcome back, Deep Divers. We're picking up where we left off, exploring the inner workings of Putin's Russia.
And it's a complex system, for sure. Lots of moving parts.
It is. We talk about the elite factions that Putin balances.
And that blurring of lines between the government and business.
Right. So today, let's dive into the economics, because it's not exactly a free market free-for-all, is it?
No, not really. Sakwa describes it as managed capitalism.
Managed capitalism. Okay, so what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, for one thing, you've got those state-owned enterprises, the SOEs.
Right, we talk about those.
They're major players in key sectors like energy, finance, even defense.
So the government has a big hand in the economy.
They do. They use regulations, subsidies, tax policies to shape things.
And is it effective, this managed capitalism?
Well, it certainly brought stability. Especially after the chaos of the 90s, Putin was able to control inflation, restore order.
So those were some early wins.
Definitely. And he's also leveraged Russia's natural resources.
Oil and gas.
Exactly, to fuel economic growth.
So it's not all bad.
No, but there are downsides.
Like what?
Well, one big criticism is that it breeds corruption.
Because when the state has so much control...
It's easy for those with connections to exploit the system.
So it's about who you know.
To a certain extent, yes. And that can stifle innovation, limit opportunities for others.
It creates an uneven playing field.
It does.
And then you've got the sanctions.
Yes. Those have really thrown a wrench into things.
How so?
Well, they limit Russia's access to foreign capital technology markets.
So put a squeeze on the economy.
You could say that it's forced Russia to adapt.
So how have they adapted?
Well, they've pushed for import substitution, trying to produce more domestically.
Okay.
And they've also strengthened ties with countries outside the West.
Like China.
Exactly. It's a way to diversify their economic relationships.
But it's a tough balancing act, isn't it?
It is trying to be self-sufficient, but also needing to engage with the global economy.
Especially with those sanctions still in place.
Right. It's a real dilemma for Russian policymakers.
And then there's the whole foreign policy dimension.
Yes. Putin's assertive foreign policy has definitely complicated things.
Because it's led to those sanctions.
It has, but it's also pushed Russia closer to countries like China and Iran.
So it's a complex geopolitical game.
It is a very high-stakes game.
And it makes it even harder to predict what the future holds for Russia.
Absolutely. There are so many factors at play.
It's a reminder that understanding Russia requires going beyond the headlines.
It does. You need to look at the nuances, the complexities.
The political, the economic, the social, all intertwined.
Exactly. It's a fascinating puzzle.
And one that we'll continue to explore in part 3.
We'll look at some potential scenarios for Russia's future.
And try to make sense of the Putin Paradox and what it means for the world. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the Putin Paradox.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have, from the KGB to managed democracy to sanctions.
It's a complex picture for sure.
It is. And now the big question, what's next for Russia? What's the future look like?
Well, Sakwa doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
Right.
But he does offer some interesting scenarios based on his analysis.
Okay, so what are some of the possibilities? Where could Russia be headed?
One scenario is a gradual liberalization.
Okay, so not a revolution, but like a slow evolution.
Exactly. A gradual opening up, maybe driven by economic necessity.
Or maybe a new generation of leaders?
Yeah, that's possible too.
But can a system built on control really change from within?
That's the big question. The forces of inertia are strong.
Right. Those who benefit from the current system won't give up power easily.
Exactly. So any liberalization would likely face resistance.
Like trying to turn a giant ship around.
A very good analogy.
It takes time and effort and maybe a whole new crew.
Right.
And on the flip side, Sakwa also mentions the possibility of things getting even more authoritarian.
Yeah, a hardening of the system.
So more crackdowns, more control.
Exactly, especially if the economy worsens or external pressures increase.
And we've already seen signs of that, haven't we?
We have limitations on media freedom, crackdowns on dissent.
It's a reminder that stability can come at a cost.
It can come at a cost to freedom and individual rights.
And then, of course, there's the question of Putin himself.
Yes, the succession issue.
He can't rule forever, can he?
Well, nobody can.
But he's been in power for so long.
Over 2 decades.
It's hard to imagine Russia without him at this point.
It is. His dominance has shaped the entire system.
So what happens when he's gone?
Well, Sakwa talks about a few possibilities.
Okay.
One is a smooth transition, a hand-picked successor.
So like a carefully orchestrated handover of power.
Exactly. That would be the ideal scenario for the elite.
Keeps things stable, keeps their interests protected.
Right, but it's risky.
Because
Because it could easily lead to infighting power struggles.
right, someone else might challenge the chosen successor.
Exactly. Or there could be a popular uprising demanding change.
It's like a powder keg waiting to explode.
And the longer Putin stays in power, the more unpredictable the succession becomes.
So we're left with a lot of uncertainty.
We are, but that's the nature of complex systems.
You don't always get easy answers.
No, but we've gained a deeper understanding, I think,
Of how Putin's system works, the challenges it faces.
and the potential paths Russia might take.
So some key takeaways for our listeners.
Well, first, Russia is not a monolith.
Right, it's a country full of contradictions.
Aspirations for freedom, but also a fear of chaos.
A strong leader, but at the cost of democratic values.
Exactly. And second, Putin's system, while resilient, is not invincible.
It faces internal and external pressures. Its future is uncertain.
Right. So we're left with a lot to think about.
We are. The Putin Paradox is a fascinating read.
It really makes you question what the future holds for Russia.
And for the world. And on that note, that's a wrap for this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning.
Thank you for tuning in to the Power Book of Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join our growing community. Click the bell icon so you never miss an update. We have so much more inspiring content coming your way.